Hi, I'm going to read from my new book, Still. I'll start from a section called Conditions of System-Wide Crisis. A study of the materially inclined. Before the assumption that there is an end, there is boredom, suffering, and generalized pain. A textile covers, a crumpled garment on the bed, a lopsided shoe or teetering glass, paper strewn or folded neatly. People come and go. Nature acts. Real or unreal, time passes inadvertently. I kept the closets packed, undone organization. Could go for a walk or not. No, probably not. Movement is the enemy of stillness. I unvoice and unclaim language, refuse an active participation. Do not make the slightest difference. Shelves accumulate dust in a layer of affective stimulus. I bathe only to forget the body. Overflow potential. Every system of violence starts with a word, a nightmare, prescribed by a precision strike, always in a state of war, extraction, circulation, or a part-time revenge of the I that makes you and the you that makes me and somehow leaves no trace. I only write to be unproductive. I only write of governmental neglect and war violence. Anxieties gone viral, move the cursor and click into circulation. Despotic entrenchment, slipped in codes, an unruly mob, or, finally, historical incivility forged and non-discursive to this untamed morality. This landscape is personal. Either the self is disembodied representation or unrepresentable. Technologies that touch as strange, that map make into capital, make every spectator into spectacle, constantly caress or bombard, extend and bloat the self, to produce and reproduce. This is an opening, an unraveling of structure, to turn from signal to noise, to make what's visible invisible, to remove the spectator and the spectacle. My leaking representation. I cracked the code somehow of how to cease to exist, understood it just long enough to melt away, seep into the floorboards through the cracks in the foundation where the good earth has been hiding. I let the juice of my once flesh rot there, drain to where the good dirt is still hiding, still waiting, to spread my thick and viscous like once flesh over and through the porous dirt. It's quiet there for me. I can be restful there. And let gravity support this lumpy mess, this once identity. I settle in the dirt, waiting with microbes splitting, cells and self-defense, my near inert inching outwards, downwards and upwards on this buoyant ground. My fading and buried is conquered and alienated, bifurcated and altering, left behind every identifying feature, each signifier of my being. I'm left fragile and disposable, with erasures made necessary to disarticulate my willing desertion. A mechanism for new knowledge. I was there, on the other side of circulation, practicing sadness, stillness amid ruin, doing nothing in a wakeful sorrow. My unmoving behavior is a surplus paralysis. They tried to move me, but I was unmoved. I kept it under lock, my true feelings, my implicated dismantling, a sort of meaning-making. Preoccupied with that which is hidden, I let it all pass by. An expert at non-being, I oscillate, burn the object. At the point of becoming, I quiver, fluctuate, tremble, pulsate, flutter. I draw a cypress tree, under which I purport to dream, not figment or movement, not speaking words or reaching a textual untelling. I draw a cypress tree, under which I purport an inexistent consciousness, an unknowing indecipherability, a cunning contention that is well-prepared barbarism. Perpetual and devastating, toward or away from the vocal, illegible or illegal, these compressed mechanisms of imprint dispossess of identity and forget difference, and even madness of past and place, undoing the knots that hold, to trace future recollection, risking, daring, extant dimensions, and still, stripped of experience, would never presume to experience. And this final section is, the page finally disappeared. A final empty-handedness. Memory formed, unformed, degenerates to generate, historically lived, inflated ideologies, ritualistic formations, dispossessing both the ancestor and the descendant. My aversion enabled it to speak, to recontextualize my object, to recontextualize I structure my desire for desire through movements forged of former worlds. Moving without words, moving without hands, moving without. My inactive disposition, my unyielding incoherence forms a means to, yet still, structured by my desire to emulate the commodity, automate non-knowledge formed but never acted. My aversion to be subject still forms this congested subjectivity, still this mimetic non-compliancy, still dismantling uncertainty. This eruptive tautological desire for non-being's silencing of language requires a further frenzy, an empty volatility, of movements forged of other worlds, of movements forged of future worlds. A distorted and deep paralysis. We looked elsewhere, silently becoming, recur or fracturing, still displacing this exhausted disaster, saturating our perception of unending calamity. These cacographic and dodic procedures distort multiplicity, this voiceless, vertiginous insomnia, shaken by my unsaid, refusing performativity by rival movement, of this shapeless transfiguration of experience, of this untold desire, or an imprisoned abandon, still expecting recollection, an eternally wrenched motion, an unbound wandering that is conflated, mangled, extractive, defies continuity, exhausted of the words I make of myself in this map of absent space. Once suffocating, my depleted becoming, my left behind identity that still defines, in that it is still encountered an inscription. The silence is no accident. This immediate and momentary sensation of skin on woven wool upholstering the structure that holds my packaged flesh that somehow relates me to gravity is an absence of everything else. This simple pleasure of being still becomes nothing, too. Becomes a distorted paralysis. My motionless body shifts perspective, too. This silent body estranges, slouches in the negative space of accumulation, dispossesses and collapses itself into pauses. Waves in vacuous disquiet. The sanguine play-acting of being in the world is a disillusioned giving into. What massacre still awaits. This bloodied sentence is not even a sentence. To write, I want the body to disappear and then forget about it. Such anguish. Even now I can taste it. My future sad self in lost action, failed relation, weathered history. Kept for future study, a remnant of geology. Failed movement. Stayed close to the ground, kept the dirt in my fingernails, learned nothing. Abandoned my desires until there was nothing left of them. Felt no regret and had nothing to show for it. In any historical moment, an opening in the present is only imagined, half forgotten. In the dead of night. Say I disappeared. I died, buried whole or in pieces, who cares? I ceased to exist. It's over, done with. I put an end to the solipsistic individuality that exists only in a capitalist nightmare, exists only in abstractions of the subject, exists only when equivalencies are made between the time it takes to make a thing and how much someone will pay for it. Or when nourishment sold to one body is valued at the life of another, and when some bodies stand up to it, driven by the so-called death wish of no future for some future and lose their bodies, no one even notices. Say, burn the streets, the roads, the sidewalks, break the bank, really break it. Say I disappeared, I fucking died, who cares? I was only there to fill the coffers of the rich anyway. Kill the I, rewrite history, burn all flags, burn all bridges, burn, personalized programs, facial recognition software, free delivery, and invent a new language, invent new souls. And I'll end with a quote from Mao. Life is therefore also a contradiction, which is present in things and processes themselves, and which constantly originates and resolves itself. And as soon as the contradiction ceases, life too comes to an end, and death steps in. Thank you.